Greetings, everyone. How are you? It is a Saturday. I'm going to turn a little brighter light on over here. I just grabbed myself very thankful to have it too, a watermelon kombucha. One of my favorite brands is Brew Doctor. I like the love. I like the mental calm that has all the grains in it. I've got my mom necklace on today because my Zawa one got a broken clasp on it. I am up and presenting to you after 37 years, having lost my child. He lost his life 14 months ago, 1 year and 2 months, 14 months ago. And all of my life, one thing my son really knew about me in particular was that I really love to study. I love to dig in and find the answers, not just the answers, that authority, which is a byproduct of industries. And I'm going to break all this down quickly, succinctly, and very easily. Not just a byproduct of industries and just accepting them arbitrarily. But because I worked in the legal arena as a senior paralegal, who was afforded, privileged, very thankful to have had a very good brain and worked with some outstanding specialist attorneys who in the mid 90s, were $400 an hour in a place, San Jose, California, that most people also called Silicon Valley. I grew up in San Jose my whole life and then moved over to the Santa Cruz Mountains. And then at the age of 42, I packed up my then 6, almost 7-year-old child, and we made a trek across country, and we had planned to move to Minnesota. 20 years, my job was sitting in an attorney-sized office for over 10 years in one particular firm with Paul Ness and Robert Lewis and Ed Miller, Terry Daly at 1635 the Alameda. And I had an attorney-sized office. And I did things like summarize depositions, go in and do conflict resolution. We also know it as mediation. And a big part of my job, I'm going to say at least 60, 70, and sometimes more % of my daily activity was surrounding persuasive writing. Now, when you work in the legal industry, as I did for all those years, and preceding those years, I did a profession that a lot of females go into, because as I went into the legal arena, quite young, in my 20s, early 20s, I started off as a girl Friday is what they used to call them. I don't think you even hear that anymore, but those were the 80s. Maybe some of you that are listening or going to listen in the future have never heard of a girl Friday. Especially, I have an issue today. I take issue with anyone referring to me as a girl when I'm a grown, powerful, elder woman. I'm a woman, and I'm worthy of being called a woman instead of being called a girl. It's minimizing, it's reducing, it's disempowering, and I don't want to prance around with heels on my feet and fake up all over my face and fake hair dye and pretend like I don't know anything with a high-pitched voice. I am a grown, powerful woman, and I encourage you to be one too. So let's get into it. Industries. Legal industry has many branches and offshoots. They are the courts. They are the various elevations and levels of the courts. You have the superior, you have the small claims court or the reconciliation court. You have the superior court, you have the Supreme Court, right? You have the appellate court. You have all of these different issues and jurisdictions. And they base a lot of their decision-making, the judges who preside or the juries that follow guidance along with a judge, even mediators, have to follow what are called legal statutes. They're assigned a number, so they are a code. Now, when I went to school, it was a 2-year program in addition to my associate's degree. And in 1989, I received a certification as a paralegal with an emphasis in family law. That was my specialization area. When I was a girl Friday, what I would do was wash the dishes. I'd do whatever they needed to be in the law firm. I would eventually sit down and they could see that my keyboarding is at about 100 words a minute, depending on right now, maybe it's a little lower. And so they would have me type documents. We had typewriters when I started in the early 80s. I was a very young 20-something. We had carbon paper that you then had to, bless up, good to see you. Hey, Shaman. Yay, so happy. Oh, yay, good to see you. Thank you for joining me. So I quickly started to learn as a girl Friday. I got sent to the court with documents that had to be filed, which means the clerk of the court is going to file stamp the date, the time they came in, because one of those statutes is the statutes of limitations. And the statute of limitations has to do with the type of action that you're filing, whether it's a civil action, right? A punitive action, a criminal action, a family law action. They all have a statute, well, most of them have a statute of limitations. A wrongful death, some of these issues, they would have 5 years or up to 10 years from the time you discovered that you were wronged and you needed to take action. There was a statute of limitations. And if you went beyond that in terms of filing your summons and complaint, or whatever you needed to do to, receive compensation for your injury, your damages, to rectify your situation, you needed to do it within the statute of limitations. So as a girl Friday, I went to the clerk and whoa, I felt important. Here I was in my early 20s, and I was going to the court, and I was working at a law firm, and I was going to school and finishing my AA degree. I was learning about raw food and reversing cancer and taking more and more of these classes, which was my passion and my love. But law was something I liked as well, quite a bit. I loved it because I loved the concept of seeking justice for people. And I loved family law because I thought it was really important to really be there and be someone who could help when it came to the best interests for the minor children involved. Okay, not so much the property, that's important too for sure, but the best interest of the minor children. Then I began working as I was also going through college. Since my keyboarding was so nice and fast, computers started getting brought into the law offices, and very, very seldom during this time, even in Silicon Valley, did you see female attorneys. And when you did, they were always noted as aggressive. But it's because females were just really trying to enter into this workplace, in the legal place. So as I first became a paralegal, I was wearing black pinstripe, navy blue suits, tan suits, conservative heels. My hair was done. My little bit of makeup was on. It was always suntan and maybe black pantyhose. In California, it didn't get all that cold. And it was like an entirely different life. One that it's almost very difficult to imagine seeing me as you see me in my dreadlocks today, knowing that I'm a person that espouses natural health and healing. What's up? Good to see you. It's been so long. Oh, all is well. And I am moving with grief, and I am learning how to live without my child here. And I'm learning to regenerate my body after 4 years of some pretty heavy stress. So now we have industries. We have the legal industry, we have the medical industry, and the medical industry has a big umbrella. And that umbrella is the AMA, the American Medical Association. It is the premier, undisputed, unchallenged. It's very deeply connected with church and state. We have the medical authority, which is the American Medical Association. They have a publication. It's called JAMA, the journal, JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. You following me? How do you like my jerry can there in the background? It's got my 5-gallon jerry can with the filtration and the shower nozzle on it. So let me take a sip of my kombucha here. The medical industry has its own, like the legal industry has the Black's Law Dictionary and all of the codes. And places like California more sooner sooner came into having very separate codified areas of law. So whereas other states, Minnesota included, and many other states in the United States, which has become a corporation since 1933, and my family was very aware of that, and I was taught that back in the early 1960s because of the German influence, including in the monarchy. So our country necessarily became one where the people started more and more and more turning away from the three forms of authority. And the three predominant forms of authority were generational authority. So in other words, you lived very, very connected to the land, and generation after generation received the principles, the foundations, and the truths about life. Generationally, it was passed down, ancestor to the younger generations. Now, the authority comes at a time, today especially, where the people are soaked and drenched in fear. There's produced, because of the huge pandemic and epidemic, as spoken about in my book, Detox and Heal Your Thyroid. The people are so energy depressed. They are manifesting lots of depression. And one thing that we often don't see within ourselves is we start to manifest a lot of what is classically called obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. We want things very categorically organized. We want to know what container does that fit into, because I need to have, I don't know what to trust anymore. And I hear you. It's difficult to trust. It really is. So let's go back to law, because we talked about the medical and the legal authority, the AMA, and the codes and the statutes, and the various forms of the legal system, from the attorney office, the paralegal, to the various types of courts, to the codes, to the codification of the areas of law, and how it became to be more and more expansive, like the legal system. Now we get more and more and more DSM, diagnostic service manuals, more and more 10 levels, maybe 11 now, of the International Codes of Disease. They're called the ICD codes. So when you are diagnosed by your doctor, they are a diagnosing facility. That is strictly what the AMA extends its services upon, is you having a confirmed diagnosis. That ICD-9 or 10 code, is going to be utilized for purposes of another industry, which is the insurance industry. Now you have, let's add number 4, you have the academic industry. So we have medical, legal, insurance, academic, okay? All of these are generating lots and lots of energy based on what? On you. You are producing, they are procuring energy from you. I want to introduce something briefly within this thread of thought, which is, if you even Google, is radiation harmful? Yes, moderate to high levels, different forms of radiation are harmful. And as I stated in my book, Detox and Heal Your Thyroid, radiation in the form of I-131 radiation, which was liberally used during the 60s and 70s in the state of Nevada, and it's been used in many, many other places in the United States as well as the world. There's an apology by Bill Clinton online, you can actively find it, that in fact they were human experiments. They were not just nuclear atomic weaponry experiments, with the last one that we're told, allegedly, being 1970 with Bainbury in Nevada. So look them up. If your thyroid grabs this form of iodine when it is so hungry for the trace elements that you need, which you know nothing about, because the AMA is going to poo-poo, make you believe it's quackery. You know, not a lot of others are going to be out there supporting it, because it's like most of them they haven't done their homework. They don't have time. We are so obsessed with our devices today. We don't have time. I know mothers that don't even hold down a part-time or a full-time job. They're stay-at-home mothers, and they don't have time, okay? This is ridiculous. As a solo mother, a solo maverick mother, who ran a business and parented, and we had a dog and took care of an entire home that we owned. It is about organization, but it's more. about your levels of energy. And that's what hair tissue testing will show me. Through thyroid and adrenal ratios, I will know exactly what is going on through all those elements, not just looking at this, not just one ratio, not just this one element, not are they too high or too low, looking at the whole picture. And this takes years and years. It's not a turnkey business. So let's keep going. The academic industry, let's add that one on. So now you are funneled and farmed through 12 years of learning your mother tongue, which is not your mother tongue, but you've been told it's your mother tongue, which is English or English in word sound power. It is a land gauge. It is a gauge for keeping the people constantly preoccupied in the membrane, in the brain, thinking about how they're going to construct the spelling, the words, the grammar, the syntax, the personage. Are they talking in first, second, or third person? Are you that? So I've seen actually some of the most brilliant elders that never were college baptized, educated, never went to college or went to very little, or some went to quite a lot. And they are some of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And they are pushed down and pushed down because industry does not want to tolerate or allow this. I'm seeing it today when people start to talk about what's really going on. So what about radiation? Not only does it beg the thyroid, place the thyroid into a place of compromise. So now the thyroid is grabbing the harmful iodine. When you were already tired, you were already exhausted, you were already starting to make cysts and problems inside of your body. But now you're going to have to deal with that radiation, which is going to be more likely to turn the cyst and nodules into cancer. Okay? Now, radiation is cell manipulative. So all you have to do is do some minute, extremely baby basic research, and you will find. So let's go back to law for a minute. It was in the mid-1980s that I was given my own Westlaw account. And Westlaw, if you don't know, because I titled this video about authority, and I did it in such a kind way, because I'm not 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. I'm going to be 60 this year. I've been through a lot. I've read hundreds and hundreds of books because of my career in law, where I would sit in an attorney office and you're not always in court. And as a paralegal, I could not argue before the bench, but I could go in camera, meaning I could have negotiation, argument, and mediation and conflict resolution inside judges' chambers. I could actively work with other attorneys to, talk about disputes between our clients and try to solve them. And I was definitely the one who was handed the file the minute they walked out of the attorney's office, who interviewed, and they wrote the big fat check too. Well, I made $35 an hour in the 90s, which was, I'm not complaining, it was decent money. I was billed out at $100 an hour with Robert L. Lewis, who's an attorney in San Jose. Okay, maybe still practicing. I haven't kept track in the last many years. So I would sit and I would write what are called moving papers. And moving papers had to do a couple of things. Now, moving papers would look different for family law cases than they would for civil procedure cases, than they would for criminal cases. Some would be heavy on precedent, meaning cases that were already decided by judges in the favor, that were similar enough that had been Shepardized, meaning that you would look through Shepard citations and make sure that another judge somewhere else in the United States hadn't said, nope, we're going to dissent, or we're going to overturn, or we're going to appeal that decision. That's not going to work. So it was my job to provide persuasive writing in the form of moving papers, meaning to write the motions that were moving on their way to obtain the order, the result, the disposition of the case or the matter or the subject of these moving papers. Moving papers probably isn't used as much anymore. Bless up, good to see you all here. I don't want to get off track, so I'll acknowledge in just a moment. And these moving papers were typically called motions. They were called OSCs for short, an order to show cause. Order to show cause, an OSC. So these would have to go down to the judge's examiner, and I would go down there in person and bring these moving papers. Before now we do everything digital filing, or we try to do most of it. And I would bring them and I would explain to the woman, who was also very sophisticated, a paralegal herself. And many of us knew exactly what the attorneys knew, but we decided not to go to law school. That's something we decided not to do. So we got paid a handsome wage to use our good brain and our ability to type and get our things, or have a secretary type it out. But since I type so fast and I wanted to edit as I go, I did my own. We had a couple legal secretaries as well. So these moving papers, oftentimes I needed to use my own account that was paid for by the attorneys for Westlaw to find something, and that was legal authority. The attorney would dictate on a small micro cassette, might be on his lunch break. Paul Ness would do this every single day. He would come in, sit and eat his lunch with his suit and his tie on, and he would go through the mail with his letter opener, open it up. Okay, letter to John Ray, and it would be like, I'm enclosing the order that blah, blah, blah. Next, da-ding, da-ding, da-ding. And the cassette tape would only be about 15 minutes. I would type out my instructions. Karen, there's 3 depositions here for the soils engineering firm that we represent. I'd like you to go through and give me deposition summaries. I'm looking for this needle in the haystack. So Karen would go through all these depositions, that maybe a couple hundred pages, where the attorney's asking the questions, and the other client for the attorney, our client or their client, is answering the question. And I would go through and highlight the sections that I needed to make sure, and paperclip the side of the page, go through, and then I would form a synopsis, a shortened version, and I would quickly type up a memo in proper memorandum format, to, from, date, regarding, so that it could be in the file. It could be in the file, and all of our files were kept absolutely in an amazing, amazing order. I dealt with highly intelligent in Silicon Valley, highly organized for the large part. One attorney I worked with was not quite as much as the others, and I ended up having to do a lot of compensatory type work to keep us balanced, because his office may end up being a mess, and then you got to go in there and find things on occasion, because it's like, we need this right now. So these moving papers go to the court. I would use my Westlaw to find the case law, sometimes to find the statutes. I would use the shepherds to shepherdize the case law that I did quote, and make sure that I'm doing one thing. And the one thing I was doing is giving the examiner, for the judge, that I knew what the judge's authority was going to be for them to be able to rule in my favor, or to consider ruling in my client's favor, right? I took my job very seriously, as a 20 and 30 something does. It's a very different learning time and period and experience of life than someone who's 59. I dressed the part. I drove the BMW. I was in court with my briefcase and my little makeup on and everything, and I was an entirely different individual. Even though I was growing in my foods and healing and all these things that I did, and all this money that I made went into growing me as a medicine woman and a shaman. So these are the fields. So the attorneys would say, get me authority on this so that I can get, this moving papers done. And sometimes they would do an official document, different than a motion, but very similar, called a Memorandum of Points and Authority, or an MPA. They'd say, we need an MPA. It's going to have to be kind of a lengthy one. This is what we're after. I need you to find the needle in the haystack. The client is going to be bringing in and delivering about 10 cardboard boxes full of documents. I need to know in 3 days if you can go through all those boxes and find exactly the documents to evidence the position that we need. Well, absolutely. So it is to this day that the muscle that is my brain, you have one, it's your heart is a muscle and your brain is a muscle, essentially. And it's not a gift. People are not gifted in the true respect with a great, great brain. Maybe they are in terms of inherited tissue mineral patterns, and maybe starting off with high copper and less toxic elements, and conscious parents that thought about their conception, preconception. Well, we don't have that today. We don't even have talk of it, really. I don't even hear people talking about it. And when I bring it up, it's kind of far out there for a lot of people. But it's actually one of the most important things we should be examining at this time. So after reading decades and decades ago, folks like Greg Braden in quantum physics and power versus force, and taking courses at Twin Lakes College of Healing and Ayurveda and Abhyanga and Panchakarma, and going to herbal school for several thousands, and going to massage school and going to the yoga training, and realizing what it did to open up my body using prana, which is breath, connecting the breath to opening up the centers of the body and releasing tension, to walking barefoot, to sleeping on the floor, to removing the makeup and the toxic products over 30 some years ago, to stopping shaving my underarms and often not shaving my legs. Letting myself be, as many of you are waking up and realizing, look at the contraption they're using. When a baby is born in a medicalized birthing situation and they're placed in this heinous, torturous device where they're strapped down and the penile foreskin is cut off. And then you hear people like Ellen DeGeneres and others talking about using that foreskin for facial treatments, for anti-aging, for youthing. My God, this is why the phone call that I had today from a woman who's about a year older than me, she's 61. She said, I feel like I'm living in the Twilight Zone. And I had a conversation with a woman last night who also lost her son to the opioid and opiate epidemic that's happening. We don't have enough people that realize that hundreds of thousands, not just a couple hundred, not just a few thousand, hundreds of thousands of our young people are dropping dead, like my son, okay? And they are because criminal, chemically designing people, criminals who designed chemicals, I can get really emotional about this, were allowed to hijack our system to come over to the United States with the intention of making, manufacturing, marketing, mass dispensing of medications that never should have been given to our people. So my grandmother raised me, you trust the damn doctor and you're going to be screwed. Okay. Now YouTube just let me know that unless you're logged in, I got an email the other day that they're going to seriously age restrict my content based on one particular video called Reversing Cancer Naturally, which I did between 2008 and 2010, one time for myself and many times for my client, many times. I had documented advanced ovarian carcinoma. I had a CT blood test, a CA, the cancer antigen. I had a CT scan done. And I also was in a laparoscopic where they open up and look at your ovary surgically, open you up and look. So I had 3 identifiers confirming by Dr. Scott Nielsen, who's now retired, who gave me a fraudulent diagnosis of advanced ovarian carcinoma and told me that they wanted to do a major horizontal, major incision, take out all my organs, and then come all the way up to my underarms and strip all of my lymph nodes because they were 100% sure that my cancer had spread. And had I have done that, let me stand back here for a minute. Had I have done that, I would not be someone who can be out walking 4 hours a day, even after not sleeping and losing my only child, losing many, many things, having 5 major stressors, okay? So, industry necessarily prescribes an allegiance, careful listening, and write this down. The industries I've mentioned, just a tad of them, the legal, the medical, the insurance, the academic, The financial? Okay. Well, I mean, you can't really do that job because you didn't buy a credential. Oh, really? Okay. So I can't be a paralegal unless I paid the school and took their training. Well, I certainly got a lot of benefit in their training, but let me tell you something. I got most of what I know today on the job. I got most of what I know today in terms of common sense and intragenerational wisdom passed down through the authority I first spoke about, which is generational authority. Grandmothers, maternal and paternal, mother, father, other aunts and uncles passed down information that gave me fortitude, honesty, integrity, right relations, motivation, energy, and the ability to seek out healing myself when I didn't feel the best. I talk with other women, and this is never a put down, but many have made the decision that it's absolutely too unbearable to get up and function in life when you've lost your child. It's absolutely true. It's unbearable. My eyes are still puffy. I still cry every day. I still break down. If radiation distorts cells, and we are in the midst of installing upper level, upper echelon technology, tricknology in word sound, do our bodies and our cells, therefore, T-H-E-R-F-O-R without the E, therefore, I conclude that our environment is in fact not conducive to promoting a state of genuine health and wellness. It can't possibly be. And it's evidenced not by BBC, not by CNN, not by Fox News. There's no book out there that specifically says, here's the truth, people. You're going to have to use one thing, deduce. Deduce for yourself based on elders at a time when great fear is being pushed and pushed onto the people. You don't know which way. You don't know how to make the best decision for yourself because it's confusing, because you're right. You've been lied to. You've been tricked. You've been scammed. The academic industry has informed you of what your history is. But now they're going to be taking slavery out of, I don't think it really existed. Or how about the Jews? Hey, we didn't really have the Holocaust. Really? Hey, wait a minute. So you're going to sterilize our history. You're going to singularly place yourself as the singular, only respected authority medically, because you are going to make damn sure anyone else who practices medicine. Well, wait a minute. If I go back to the Sumerian tablets, I go back to Mesopotamia, I go back to looking at the cuneiform tablets. I go back to my grandmother's personal friend, Zechariah Sitchin, Dr. Ian Stevenson, people I grew up hearing on the phone with grandmother. And they say, that's not, the Bible isn't word for word what it used to be. Let me tell you something else. Are you with me? Who's with me right now? Can you tell me who's with me right now? I want to know if you're ready for this one. Let me know. Let me take a look here. Hey, good to see you, Whitney. Tara, yay. Kiara, this is me all day. Yay, good to see you. Oh my gosh, my heart does ache. Hey, good to see you guys. Let me tell you something right now. Let me drop this nugget. You ready to write it down? Come on, let me see if you're there. Take a sip of my watermelon kombucha. It's kind of a splurge. You know, I bought 2 of them yesterday and one of them I dropped and I picked it up, but I have to drink it last night. I'm going to have to flip the screen where I'm not looking at you because I'm going to read you something. Let's go. You ready, huh? It was the late 1970s and I have to be at the post office here, so I have to leave in about 15 minutes at the most. because I want to get to the post office before they close at 2. It's important to me. I have one thing to mail and it's very important to me. Each and every one of my clients, I get it out immediately as fast as I can because you never know and it matters. Everyone matters. And I put extreme importance on every one of me and my clients, making sure that we are taken care of. Let's break it down. Word sound power, I learned it in the late 1970s from Rastafari. I grew and grew and grew and grew into it, where I started examining more and more and observing and thinking, what the hell's going on? I taught it. I started doing the hiring at the law firm where I became a paralegal in the very beginning when I was doing my internship as a paralegal before I became officially hired. And they asked me to start hiring the receptionist and the other legal secretaries so I could interview their keyboarding and how organized they were, and if they seemed like they were flaky, were they going to show up, and did they know the importance of how to greet the clients and how to dress to be in the law firm and all those things. And so I would interview, which kind of took that off of their back, and they could do what they did, which is make a lot of money. And they did a good job. I thought they did a great job compared to working with others. So word sound power was something that I started really just working with people, just like mind body medicine. 1984, I got really into that. I started working it with clients. Now, if you take the word sound, because I'm going to break this down quick. If you take the word sound of gates, and you take the word sound of people's last names, if you take the word sound and what you hear them speaking about, and they're not even paying attention, they're just using their words and they're being relaxed, you don't want them to be on guard. You want them to be free-flowing, because then, not in a judging way, you can hear. So there's deeper and deeper and deeper levels to word sound, which I've never spoken about before, not on Facebook, not on Quora. Please support me on Quora, Karen Pringle, but not here on YouTube either. Now that I'm restricted on YouTube, if you could help me out, I'd appreciate it. Get more people on board, please. Fauci. The last name Fauci means sickle. Do you know what a sickle is? Tell me right now, do you know what a sickle is? What's a sickle? Okay, somebody write it down. I'm going to switch screens if I can find it here. And I'm going to go over to where I can quickly read this if you just give me one moment here. So there's 3 types of authority. There's rational, traditional, and charismatic authority. And if you look at Max Weber, you're going to get some really good insights about how we got to where we are today through Protestantism, Protestant churches. So I'm going to look at the book of Revelations, chapter 14. I strongly encourage you to read through the book of Revelations during times I can't see my face right now, so I'm just going to read the Lamb and the 144,000. I know you've heard about the 144,000. And then I looked and I saw there before me was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him, 144,000 who had his name and his father's name. Now these are replaced when it was actually speaking of Great Mother. I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000. I have chills running up my legs right now. Who had been redeemed from the earth. These are those who did not defile themselves, for they remain virgins. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among mankind and offered as the first fruits to God and the Lamb. No lie was found in their mouth. They are blameless. Then I saw another angel flying in midair, and he had the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth. To every nation, tribe, language, and people, he said in a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water. Are you with me? Because I can't see you. Give me a minute. A second angel followed and said, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, which made all the nations drink the maddening wine of her adulteries. A third angel followed them, and here's where we start getting into it. If anyone worships the beast and its image and receives its mark on their forehead or on their hand, they too will drink the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. They will be tormented with the burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. There will be no rest day or night for those who worship the beast and its image, or anyone who receives the mark of its name. This calls for patient endurance on the part of the people of God, keep his commands and be faithful. Okay. I looked, and soon before me, here's where we go, was a white cloud. Now, I know, Whitney, I've sent you a video of Gina has about the clouds and what's going on around the sun. And seated on the cloud was one like a son of man with a crown of gold on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, "Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come. For the harvest of the earth is ripe." So he who was seated in the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Then another angel came out of the temple of heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel who had charge of the fire, my legs, the hair on all my legs are up, came from the altar, called in a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, "Take your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes from the earth's vine, because its grapes are ripe." The angel swung his sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes, and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed out of the press, rising as high as a horse's brindles for a distance of 1,600 stadia. That is Revelation 1:4. I'm going to come back over to you now. I don't have much more time today because I'm going to get to the post office here in a few minutes. Did you hear me? Did you hear what I'm saying? Fauci's last name, if you go and you Google Fauci, the spelling F-A-U-C-I, definition, because I drank a cup of caffeinated coffee yesterday, which I just do not do. It hits me like a pack of drugs, because when your adrenals are depleted, caffeine's a drug. Okay, so I used a drug yesterday. I used caffeine. Whether it's chocolate or coffee, it's got caffeine in it. Caffeine's a drug. It's a stimulant. Stimulants and sedatives. Stimulants and sedatives. So depending on your autonomic nervous system and your metabolic type, which I will tell you when you hair tissue test, I will let you know if you're sympathetic or parasympathetic, which are the two offshoots of the autonomic nervous system, the housing. Okay, the house. The house is your spirit. Your body lives in the house. I read to you from a part of chapter 1:4, forthcoming, chapter 14 of the book of Revelations, the revealing. You see, the women in the great temples, as my grandmother instructed me, we wrote these prophecies for the future of our people, knowing full well what was coming. So as I mentioned, the three forms of authority you are not going to get from an elder oftentimes. The very few that are left that are not taking medications and using drugs, you're not going to get a way to verify our authority most of the time, okay? It's not going to be like floor sleeping. Probably you're not going to find an authority for that. Or you might find the other industry, which is media. So let's talk about that really quick before I leave. The media has hyper sensationalized the Bible, turned it into a he, him, turned it into a him as a martyr base because it presents itself with a stronger form of allegiance, turned our God into a jealous, vengeful, ordering others to kill their children and sacrificial and the sacrificing lamb. But if you read it carefully, the Bible will be one of your most beneficial books if you know how to read it. That means, in the same way that I have shared with you and shown you hundreds of clients in cloquet at my shop, including pastors' wives, many, many, many people came in and I said, so-and-so is here. I sensed it. This is what they said. And I give them the name. I give them the information. It's not a gift. It's a development. Getting my brain to where I could go through voluminous amounts of content and material and hundreds of books and courses was a zest, but it was also something detrimental to me, which is I had a high copper brain. I had a mouthful of mercury amalgams that also were full of copper. So if I didn't spend years and years and years reading many of the originators of hair tissue testing and read the chemical books, even though I don't care about chemistry, I really don't. It wasn't my thing. I was like, math, chemistry, those are dude things. See, I've got the gender stereotypes, which I'm learning to bust through, because our world has been changed and rearranged intentionally to get you to this point. And so it is that I'm not here to convert, condemn, or to judge you. I'm not here, let me repeat it, to convert you, condemn you, or to judge you. I'm here to present me. And in so presenting me, I hope that coming from an elder, another form of authority, that you will not blindly just absorb and absolutely adopt everything I share with you, but it is my hope that at my weakest hour in my life, losing my precious child to a system that had full knowledge to pull these goddamn drugs off the market, not to allow these families to put these drugs out there, and they're still out there hijacking people, that things will change. And that's why I'm here. Because at some point, you're going to wish you had a hand to hold on to. You are. You're going to wish at some point that you get real help for anxiety and depression, real help for headaches and migraines, real help when you have cancer, or you go take the scientifically authority-backed, lots of books, lots of medical industry endorsements, and you do the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy, the radiation. You do the pills, you do the tamoxifen, you cut the breasts off, you do what you need to do, and you make your decision, because this is the land of Burger King. They've got you trained up. You get to have it your way. Hey, you don't have communism or socialism, or, you got people out there that want it. I'm not one of them. I am a different bird. I'm a wolf. I'm a wolf spirit. Wolf is my primary animal kindred. That's why I live with dogs. Okay? I believe that we strengthen the people. We help with our resources, with nature. We have to have clean water, full of minerals. We have to have clean air. We have to have access to health care, not a healthcare industry that does everything in a very uniform way, in a systematic way, in a codified way, and they're not willing to budge from doing it that way. So if you go in with COVID-like symptoms and you can't get information and help to actually regenerate your bars and figure out why your bars are so down, why are you getting so stiff and so linear and so rigid to the point that you're even crunching when because your brain is also getting rigidity. My brain was in such a zone with the high copper that you couldn't make sense of what I had to say. And it was frustrating to me because I was like, I know what I'm saying, but when I go back and I listen to it myself, it doesn't make sense. So it took me a period of years to mobilize and start excreting that copper, which is a bit painful, not pain, but like painful in the sense that it's going to take some time. It's not going to feel the best. You're going to feel like really catawampish. You might feel kind of manic. You might feel kind of depressed, up and down. But now we got another industry that's an offshoot of that big umbrella, the AMA. We got the mental health industry, because not enough of you know what I'm talking about. So that's why I'm here. So you can know. You can know what I'm talking about, which is, yes, we all have trauma. I have a lot of it. You might too. But it doesn't mean that we are forever married to a medication and a diagnosis code. It means that we may have that. I may have PTSD forever, right? I will forever mourn the loss of my son, premature dying, premature death at the age of 24. I will forever, as long as I live, mourn the loss of my beautiful son. But will I learn to cope with getting up and getting a shower and taking care of the dogs, cleaning my house, running to the post office, and doing what I need to do. If I don't, it's sink or swim. So what do I do that's different from people that run out and take Xanax and drink? Their house goes into foreclosure, which mine would have this April, would have gone into foreclosure. April 15th of 2021. And I didn't want to butt myself up a butt right to that date, that foreclosure date. Let's get on it right now. I don't have time to screw around, especially with this COVID thing. So I had to get on it immediately. The last name Fauci, if you Google it, you go down to where it says translations and earlier meanings. Go down to the oldest meaning you can find at the bottom where it says sickle. Do your homework, okay? Or I'll do it and I'll be here. Help support me. So I'm going to get going. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you dearly. I haven't seen anybody else write anything here. I don't know if you're still there. It shows that we've got like 6 or 7 people here. So enjoy your day. I'm going to get going, and I love you so much. I really do, or I wouldn't be showing up. I'm not monetized. I don't get paid for this. I'm here because it's important to me. And every time you are able enough to communicate with me and say something like, oh, you're welcome, Whitney. You're very welcome. Thank you for being here. I thank you too. Every time you text me and you say, hey, I'm just not sure about this, and I appreciate you and I respect you, but I'm just not clear. I love you even more. I had a text like that just today, this rise early. I said I went to sleep at a little after 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm already adrenal depleted. So when I got up at 8:30, I was like, woo, groggy. I took a look at my phone and I thought, well, I want to be available for 11:30 appointment and be fresh and showered and dogs out. So let me just get up. And I got a text and I read through it and I wasn't disappointed. I appreciated it because I thought, there's a young man who can take some time to communicate well, to think it through. And I don't think I was there at 30. So, hey, kudos, hats off. I'm glad you're thinking. I'm glad that you're questioning. Thank gosh you're questioning. Thank God you're just not the Prozac ball going with the flow with every little thing that they tell you to do. Radiation is damaging. You're not going to find that in most of the books. If you look at our senator from Minnesota, Scott Jensen, I believe his name is, Scott Jensen, and you looked at some of his videos, he was really coming out with the truth and they wanted to pull his license. If you look at Dr. Brownstein, he wanted to document empirical studies of 171 people diagnosed with COVID that he cured. He was told, you publish that, you're out, okay? If you look at doctors that were showing people that their children were having ischemic attacks, they're gone. So when other people come here and they help you, support them voraciously, get their stuff and share it. Tell people there's more than enough. You get on a lot of live streams and you get like one nugget. You get 2 or 3 nuggets. Try to give you quite a bit. I gave you the word sound of Fauci, the book of Revelations, chapter 14. We talked about what industry is. We talked about authority and how industry has created authority. And now the media and the medical industry and the legal industry are all coming together under one umbrella, a multi-lucrative mega conglomerate, to establish that medical authority and legal authority all have a containment, and that this particular set of instructions, if not followed, lends others to become crazy, too disobedient, too against the system, too injurious to others, too dangerous. I could keep going. It's like a spider with, an infinite number of legs. And that spider that was the jokester we used to refer to as Anansi, the spider. Anansi, A-N-A-N-C-Y. Make it a beautiful day. I love you dearly. I'm off to the mail.